So this used to be Phil Stefani's place, 437, and he owns Riva's on Navy Pier, and he did all these Italian restaurants. Now, he doesn't do anything with Rosebuds, but they could have a collaboration. But the whole point is the old place that he had, UB Brown, the basketball announcer, who's quite old now, used to go to the place on Fullerton every time he came in town, and his daughter ran the place, and I used to eat there, and they had pictures of him. And so you don't hear anything about Stefani's anymore. And you do hear about Lettuce and the kids, but there was Phil Stefani, and then there was, let's see, Geppen, again, another family. Oh, they were in the concessions, but there were these families that had considerable restaurant establishments in Chicago, and one of them was Stefani's, but I don't hear anything ever about any of their places anymore. So I don't know what happened to Stefani's. But it used to be a prominent restaurant group in Chicago. And so you have this place. I think it's a crab house. It's supposed to be really good. I don't know if it's the Carolina Crab House, but I'm wondering to go back into this AMC that's here, see what they've done with this. And so it's interesting coming down here. There's so much to talk about, and there should be so much going on. Like the world's largest Starbucks is on Michigan Avenue. But that doesn't really get any attention anymore. But it's literally a destination, and Chicago can emphasize it, that Chicago has the world's largest Starbucks. Now, this is a cool property with the big windows and everything, featuring different luxury goods, dresses, women's wardrobe, and then Sophia is a perfume, or basically perfumes and that, and Taylor. Lots of women's. And then there used to be Coach right here, where I don't know if they're open up again anywhere, but they were right across the street from Burberry. And so Jen, when she went shopping, she would go to Coach, Burberry, and then Tumi. Right here. Not Zegna. I like Zegna a lot. I had one shirt, but I like their fashion. Dominic, my friend, used to wear lots of Zegna, and he introduced me to Zegna. But great stuff. Now, here, this is where Jen used to shop. She'd go from Coach for her handbags, and then for other clothing, she would go to Burberry, and then she would go to Tumi for luggage and stuff that Coach didn't carry. And so she liked Coach purses, she liked Burberry clothing, and she liked Tumi luggage. And so she used to come up and shop on Michigan Avenue, and one time I was supposed to meet her. She was going to shop at the Water Tower place and down here, but we ended up not meeting. That's after we separated. But again, she liked doing that. And I've never been to RL, Ralph Lauren's right here. Ralph's Coffee. So, but I don't know. And then there's Nomi, the restaurant up here in the Park Hyatt, which is supposed to have an awesome view. I've never actually been up there. Now, the restaurant in the Peninsula, I've been up in that area with Jen in the lounge, and I've been up there, and it's a beautiful area. I never ate at the restaurant. And then there's a nice bar inside the Peninsula Hotel. And I've been up in the lobby of the Ritz-Carlton. It has a nice view from its lobby. But, you know, I never stayed at any of these places. Never stayed at the Four Seasons, but was there for a wedding. And Jane and Alex's wedding. It was great. I never stayed at the Sofitel, but I was there for Jay's wedding, and it was a great wedding. Wedding reception at the Sofitel for Jay's wedding. Jay Kim and Christine Kim getting married. And the funny thing is, you don't have to hyphenate. Jay Kim married Christine Kim. No hyphenation, right? Because if you're in a hyphenate, it would be Christine Kim Kim. Why would she do that? I mean, it would be kind of funny. It would be unique. Christine Kim Kim. But she married Jay Kim, and she was Christine Kim. So they're just the Kims. So there's no need to hyphenate. Sometimes it happens that way, where you don't have to hyphenate because the husband has the same last name as you, and you're not related. They're not related at all. They're not ancestry. Maybe somewhere way down the bloodline they are, but truly, they met each other. They didn't know each other. They're not relatives. They don't have relatives in common. So, but again, it was convenient when Christine Kim married Jay Kim. They just became Christine and Jay Kim. Now, Jen married a Lee. If she married a Kim, it would have just been Jennifer Kim and Tom Kim. And so you wouldn't have to worry about hyphenating, right? So there is ways around that whole hyphenation thing. So again, but down here in the Gold Coast and that, the Mag Mile ties into the Gold Coast, and then it ties into all the luxury hotels. So the Peninsula, Four Seasons, Ritz-Carlton, and the Omni, and numerous others. So, and then you have a luxury hotel right down here as well. And I forget the name of it. But now you got the Wintrust on the corner. But this is Prada. This ties in. This is Oak Street. Lots of high-end small shops. That ties it right into the Magnificent Mile, right into the Gold Coast. And so, again, this is the Riviera, you would say, because the Riviera is right off of the water in France. This is right off of Oak Street Beach, which is a prominent beach in Chicago, right off the lake. So this place, Thompson, Chicago, I met my boss who came out of when I joined Vima. We went to the Pancake House, which I like. It's been here a long time, the original Pancake House. And he stayed there. It's a higher-end hotel. And the funny thing is, we were the three Mikes, because the other two that ran Vima were Mike and Mike. I forget their last names, but I was Mike. So we were the 3 M's. We were Triple M. So, anyways, you have right here the lakefront. And this is Inner Lakeshore Drive right here. But you got the Drake Hotel, which is a very high-end hotel. A lot of famous people have stayed. Royalty and everything else have stayed at the Drake Hotel. And then right around the corner from the Drake, you have the Westin Hotel. So this is an extremely prominent area of Chicago. So it's an extremely affluent. And what do you want to do? You want to make it more affluent, right? Because that's the only way property values are going to go up. If you go the other way, property values are going to go down. So you have to focus on figuring out how you're going to move this steadily into a more and more affluent area. So the Louis Vuitton, but there's the backside of the Drake. And so they're going to have to figure out how they're going to make this into a much more luxurious area. And you have the Omega watches, which are very nice. I've never had opportunity to have any of these types of things, but I love watches. I mean, I only admired them from afar because my friends had very nice watches. Even my old boss, Tim, he had a Rolex, and then Jimmy, my friend, Jimmy Kang, he bought a Rolex, and I can only admire these things from afar because I don't have that kind of money. And then there's Constantine, and it's Vacheron Constantine. But anyways, they're going to have to figure out how they're going to move this to the next area of luxury. And another thing is updating the John Hancock. So here's the Westin Hotel, which I actually did my CFA class here at the Westin. So the Westin Hotel. So I'm wondering how they're going to do this area here, because I've never seen that. The Raffaello, and then here's the Wintrust on Delaware and Cafe and so on. This is the Hilton where I actually was going to work, and I was going to run this cafe right here on the corner. It was something else before, but this is the Hilton Hotel right here. And I don't know how luxury this Hilton is, but I would assume they would want it to be fairly luxury oriented to fit in with the Ritz and the Drake and the Four Seasons and the Peninsula, because this is a luxury area. And who would benefit from this even greatly too? Northwestern University. They're right over here. So, I mean, so they're in this area. Let me show you where Northwestern is up here. They have their law school up here. And there's lots of legal fields. And all those things that politicians need to be drafted up into legalese. And they need lawyers to put them in the proper context so things don't get misunderstood. Lawyers are supposed to put things in manners where they're not understood. And then they use the word term of art to make up a word to mean something. So that's what I said before. Lawyers create words and they to mean certain things, and they call them terms of art. And law is an art, a language art. Law is truly a language art. And so you go over here, right up the street is Northwestern's Law School, which is on top of its medical school, on top of its hospital. And then you have another hotel right up the street here. So you have condominium residents starting at $400K. And if you're in here, you got a great view of the lake. Every morning you get a beautiful sunrise. Truly, the sunset's on the other side. You don't get the sunset, but you do get a beautiful sunrise. Meaning you don't get to see the sunset, but you do get to see the sun go down over the lake, and that's still beautiful. So you get a beautiful sunrise, and it's not a sunset because that means that you get to see the sun going down, but you do get to see a sun, what do you call it? The light going down over the lake. So the sun dimming over the lake. So you do get this, basically, it's not technically a sunset because sunset means you see the sun set. And you're not seeing the sunset. It sets in the the west. So you see the sunrise in the east over the lake, which is incredibly beautiful. I've seen it, and it's awesome. So, and you do get a very elegant evening where the sun starts going down, and you get a very good, elegant atmosphere. And so it's really beautiful. And go down here, down Chicago Avenue. I was going to go by the law school, but I'll turn down Chicago. And here you have a nice little park. And this is all Northwestern. That's the Pritzker's, I guess, pavilion related at Northwestern. And so this is where I've taken courses at Northwestern, student at large. So... And then I used to play softball at this park, and we were a Hooters-sponsored softball team. And then I used to play tennis here by myself. And so I used to come down here during my first breakdown and come down and play tennis by myself because the courts were open late night. Yeah, I hit the ball around 1 or 2 in the morning. So playing tennis on those courts by myself, 1 or 2 in the morning, hitting the tennis ball around. So here's Northwestern, and here's the Feinberg Medical School. And so, you know, as the Gold Coast and this area, this is all tied in. So you have Navy Pier, you have North Pier, you have Northwestern. And if this neighborhood benefits, meaning the neighborhood goes up, the land value that Northwestern has is worth an incredible amount of money. The university gets filthy rich if they work with the community around it, and this neighborhood further increases. And like I told you before, in the economic downturn in 2008-9, this prices here didn't depreciate. It was one of the only places in America that actually went up in value. It didn't go up much, but it still went up in value. So it went up by a few percent. So, and the reason was because the university created a buffer, and it did. The hospital and all that created a buffer on the downside through the law school, medical school, graduate, adult continuing education, that created a buffer. So when activity wasn't going so well there, the university was still doing incredibly well. And actually, people were running into the university to get re-educated in the downturn because they couldn't find jobs. So people started going to grad school, finishing their undergrads, or getting their PhD, truly. And they were running, as I published an article on that, people were hiding out in graduate school or finishing their undergrad. People went back. A lot of people were going to night school and so on. There was a huge surge of people getting undergraduate and graduate and PhD educations during the downturn. That's what they used it for. A lot of people, like myself, I used it to get advanced education. So when there's a slowdown, it's the greatest time to go back to school and increase your value. So when things start picking up, boom, you end up in a great position. You've enhanced your skill base during the downturn, during the slow period. That's what smart people do. Add value to themselves. So when they come back on the market again, they are booming in value. So here's the Sheraton. And this goes into the river right here and the shoreline cruises and all kinds of architectural. The shoreline is one of them. But you got the Sheraton, and which I've been in. I stayed in the rooms here on New Year's Eve. And I have the group. I booked a big group of us to stay here. And the rooms are great. I gave it to my brother and they got to watch the fireworks on Navy Pier. That's before these buildings were here. You could see the fireworks display. I had rooms that you could see out onto the lake. So the view has changed a little bit from this Sheraton. But maybe they still have, because they're right on the river, they still have view that can see fireworks. But there's a couple buildings that moved into its airspace, and its visuals have changed a little bit. But one of them that moved, and it didn't block the Sheraton, but another beautiful hotel that came in is the Lowe's. And then there's the Hyatt, and I mean, this area is all about high end. So, again, here's the Lowe's Hotel, and I've only seen the lobby. I've never been in a room, but looks like a beautiful hotel. So, this area, you have the Embassy Suites, and so this area used to get lots of people from Iowa, Missouri, Indiana, Wisconsin, Minnesota. Truly. How did I know this? When I worked down here at the restaurant at Joey's, my people were coming in all over the Midwest, Ohio, truly coming in to go shopping and experience downtown Chicago for the weekend. In particular, this area of Chicago. And I got to talking to them and so on, and where they were from and what they were doing. That's how I found out about American Girls. I was talking to a dad, and he was in. Here's Pinstripe, and this is North Pier. And he was in, and I'm like, so, asking him, what is he doing in Chicago? And he's like, I brought my daughter down. I live in Iowa, and we're doing a father-daughter trip. And I'm like, so what are you and your daughter doing? Well, I brought her down to the American Girl store. And I'm like, okay, what is the American Girl store? Never heard of it. And he's like, these are these really expensive dolls. Hundreds of dollars, thousands of dollars for these dolls. And he said that they have a salon, and you bring these dolls down, and they get hair and makeup done. The dolls, they bring the dolls in with their daughter, and the dolls get their hair and makeup and everything done. And so it's this exclusive high-end doll store. And he was down here, and his daughter loves these dolls. And he's from Iowa, probably a farmer maybe, but obviously affluent. And he came down to hang out and take his daughter around to the experience, and particularly into the American Girl store for the high-end dolls. But if you think about that, you can make fashion. Prada, Calvin Klein, Christian Dior can make fashion for these high-end dolls. So they can integrate into these high-end dolls high-end fashion from Ralph Lauren and other designers into the American Girl store into their dolls. And people are used to paying hundreds and thousands of dollars for these dolls. So I've never been in, but to him it thought great, and it was a great experience for his daughter, and his daughter loved this. And him and his daughter were on this bonding trip. And so sometimes it's not his thing, it's his daughter's thing, but his daughter loves it, so he loves it. And so you live vicariously through them. Like when Jen would tell me her experiences in that, and she'd be, loving this or that or whatever in Vegas, and I took out my first team dinner and so on, and I felt all warm fuzzies and everything else. Not because that you would say I was interested, or how can I put it? Because I loved her and she was happy, I was happy. So there are things you do, you have no interest in them at all. Like she used to go to the movies with me, and she didn't like going to movies, and a lot of times she fell asleep, and I thought it was cute, and she would fall asleep on my shoulder and everything, but I would go. I mean, I like going, and she would just go along. Like Barnes and Nobles. She would go and pick up magazines and read magazines while I was doing some things. I had to be there for certain things, and she would just come along to accompany me. And I would do that with her. Certain things I didn't really have interest in, but she was doing because I was with her, and she loved it. I loved it. She was happy, I was happy. So that's the statement, happy wife, happy life, but it's both ways. See, people think it's a one-way street, but your wife does stuff not because she particularly likes doing it, or your girlfriend, not because they like doing it. They do it because they care about you, they love you. And if you're happy, they're happy. And you can tell when somebody deeply cares about you, because when they're happy, you're happy. And so there's this mutual reciprocity. When people are truly close, they can do things together, even if the other party has no interest at all, total dislike. They're happy because they feel the warm fuzzy because you're happy. And so they're in it for you and you're in it for them, and this is where two becomes one. A nice Irish pub, never been in. But this is how you get closer and you grow closer, and you can tell if that person truly loves you. Because when you radiate, they radiate.